Right. Is the zero viewers good? This is top secret debate prep stream. I'm going to be watching Tom Norman's interview on David Rams, and I might also do some slides to present in the debate tomorrow. We'll see if we have time for that. Hopefully no one's joining me, because as I say, top secret, so I don't want anybody to see what we're doing here. Still zero viewers. Good.
The general public sees this as Veganuary is bad.
If you don't have context, this guy on the left is Tom Norman. He runs an organisation called FarmKind, and they're encouraging people to donate to effective animal charities instead of going vegan for the month of January. Their campaign is called Forget Veganuary. And I have been somebody who has been quite supportive of this campaign. I definitely see the potential in this theory of change. And I've been doing a bit of thinking about this over the past few days. And crucially, tomorrow I will be having a debate on this topic against Patrick Razoroff, who goes by Foolproof Mastery online. So we're going to watch Tom Norman doing David Rams. I think I'll aim to watch all of this. And then if we've got time, I've started to put some stuff in Google Slides. So I might finish that off. I said I'd send it to Patrick beforehand, so we'll have to get that done. Thanks for joining, guys. Nice to see you. Don't tell anyone we're here.
Don't go vegan and do this instead. That's the message they receive, whether it's intended that way or not. If we take your campaign at face value and we take it to its logical conclusion, we end up with not a very nice world. Like if you told me that all I had to do was offset my flying, I would fly more. It doesn't change that the Veganuary, the organization, was sacrificed for a goal of another organization. There were some recent headlines in the UK about the charity FarmKind coming out with a...
Is this audio okay? I've got it coming through. I might have it coming through two sources here on the computer audio. Let me know if it sounds okay or if it sounds kind of echoey or weird.
Get Veganuary campaign. This has been quite a controversial campaign. Everyone's had a lot of thoughts on it. I have a lot of thoughts on it. And I'm here today with Tom Norman from FarmKind, who's the co-founder. And I believe you're the man behind this campaign. Is that correct?
Sort of, yeah. So I'm the co-founder of FarmKind. It's very much a team effort, but yeah, we've all worked on this together.
Fair enough, cool. And so, yeah, I mean, we're going to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about FarmKind and, of course, what you do and, you know, why you do what you do and what the organization is. Before we jump in, I do want to make something clear, a bit of a disclaimer, if you will, and that in this whole thing, I'm not a neutral sort of journalist or something like that. I do care about animals like you do. I donate as well to, you know, animal sanctuaries and raise donations. And I do have some strong opinions in all of this. This will be friendly and be fair, but we're gonna push where it needs to
Thanks, Lamberto. I appreciate the shout. Welcome. Good to see you.
be pushed, and we're going to find out. We're going to get to the bottom of some stuff. And another quick little disclaimer is that this isn't going to be some sort of abolitionist versus welfareist or video, nothing like that. I'm not coming from an anti-FarmKind position here. I'm open to what FarmKind does, but we are going to be looking into this decision to what I believe has been, you know, publicly denouncing veganism and Veganuary in order to raise donations. We're going to be looking into that. That's what we're here to really push on and question. Now, before we get to the controversy, we'll give you a chance now to talk about FarmKind. I mean, for someone who's never heard of FarmKind, what is it? What do you normally encourage people to do? What kind of change are you aiming for? You know, why this? A bit about you, basically. Give us a nutshell introduction.
You know, I hope Tom's doing okay and the team at FarmKind are doing okay. I'm sure there's been a hell of a lot of pressure on them around this campaign because it's this weird kind of situation of being a minority within a minority view, having this niche position within veganism, which is already itself a niche position. One gets into the situation where one identifies very strongly with the in-group. And so, you know, I've had the experience posting about this on LinkedIn, a lot of vegans throwing cold water on it. And, such is their right to do so. I'm quite happy for a robust debate, but it's certainly a different feeling than posting anti-meat things and having meatheads coming into the comments and arguing. So, I think I talked yesterday about FarmKind being the wasp cake and attracting all of the hate for potentially, some payoff. So I hope the team are dealing with the pressure of this week okay.
Yeah, sure. So, FarmKind, we're quite a young organization. We were started by myself and my co-founder in roughly the early 2024. We've been kind of public since August 2024, and basically what we exist to do is to try to increase the amount of money that's going towards charities working to help farmed animals. So, what maybe some of your listeners will know, but some might not be aware, is globally we have, roughly speaking, $300 million going to help farmed animals each year, which is a tiny amount of money. This is like roughly what McDonald's makes in profits in about a week, going across the whole world to try and.
I should make notes from this actually for the debate. That's what we're here for. 300 million total budget for the movement. But it's one of those numbers that sounds like a lot if you're used to dealing with like a household budget. But when you think of all the salaries that has to pay and all of the infrastructure and everything else for a worldwide movement, 300 million isn't that much after all. So that's definitely going to be something that I'll want to cite. So I guess the point there from my perspective here, let's these are my slides. So don't, hopefully there's still nobody here because you're seeing my notes at this point. Given that the current movement budget is so low, there's expected to be high marginal utility from additional funding. If the movement already had billions and billions in funding, then it's unlikely that a campaign of this scale would generate a significant increase in that funding. But starting from the position of 300 million, I mean, FarmKind were the organisation that were involved with that donation match by Dwarkesh, and he gave 250k, which was matched to 500,000, and then a few other rich people jumped in. I made a video about it at the time. But I think that got up to over 2 million. So they generated nearly 1% of the entire movement's budget in that one fell swoop. So I wonder what's a reasonable aim. How much money would the campaign have to raise to say that it has offset the harm done on the other side? Assuming that there is harm on the other side, there's another point that is potentially in contention. It could end up being something that is actually a good thing for Veganuary because it just gets Veganuary more attention and more people think of it again this year and so on. Very much depends how it plays out in the media, I suppose, which so far, medium. It's a thing in motion for sure.
Help 80 billion land animals, countless fish and insects, and all these animals that are suffering in factory farming. This is just simply not enough money. There are a lot of really amazing organizations out there doing incredible work and great ideas out there for other organizations that could be doing good work that don't get funded, can't help animals because there isn't enough money for everybody to do their work. And so that's the problem that we're trying to face. And really the kinds of people that we're looking at are particularly people who, and I think this will be a really relevant point to kind of, as we kind of carry this conversation on, the really large number of people out there who surveys say hate factory farming, think it's wrong. About 50% of people will say they want a ban on factory farming in surveys. But almost all those people are not.
We've seen even higher numbers than that. I think we were looking at numbers in the 70s, 80s, 90s saying that they oppose factory farming or that they're concerned about animal welfare or want stricter laws on these things. But yeah, I agree with the point broadly.
not vegans, they're not vegetarians. They might be like reducing the amount of meat and trying to take some steps to like eat a bit less meat and stuff. That's more common, but they're not like in that sort of like vegan or veganish category. So there's like a lot of people out there who are not taking the kind of step that we in the animal movement typically.
Hey, Vegan STEM, good to see you. Really, I'll have to see how we go. I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes, and I'm kind of making notes for Patrick Roseroff tomorrow.
Say individuals should take if they care about this issue, but they say they care about this issue. And given that like 95% of the donations that go to animals are going to dogs and cats, you can see that there's like a lot of people out there who are giving to animals. They're happy to donate a little bit of their money to help animals, but they're not helping farmed animals at all because they're not changing their diet and they're not donating to farmed animal charities. And it's these are the people that we're trying to speak to. We're trying to say that we know you love animals. We know you hate the way that they're treated in factory farms.
Thanks, Vegan STEM. I appreciate that. Well, we'll see. We'll see. You can peep my debate blueprint prep here. We're going to do a little intro bit each. I think Patrick's also making slides, so it'll be a good debate. I'm looking forward to it.
You can choose to help. One of the ways you can help is obviously veganism. We don't emphasize that because lots of other people are emphasizing that. We say, look, one of the ways you can help is to donate. You can take some of that money you're already donating or donate a little bit more, and you can have a surprisingly big difference for animals for a surprisingly small amount of money. So one of the big headline numbers that we use, most of our donors are in the US, so we say $23 a month can help animals about as much as cutting all factory farm products from your diet altogether. I think another powerful statistic is that 83 cents can free a chicken from a cage. So you can help.
You know, I haven't really said this, but if you notice my commentary on this, they framed it as £15 a month will do more to help animals than going vegan. I don't want to labour this point too much, but I think they are actually kind of soliciting donations which will do more than going vegan, right? So it's offsetting and then some with the amounts that they talk about. Now, using like the most ambitious numbers per dollar is very you get to offsetting at like a ridiculously small amount that would be in the realms of like little enough donated to a charity that it's not worth the processing fees on their side kind of thing. But yeah, there's a few points to that. Somebody made the point that some of these estimates talking about animals helped rather than animals saved, and so there's going to be some amount of, you know, improved welfare for X number of animals offsets killing Y number of animals, which again, some people won't even accept that in principle. This is overall how I'm thinking about the potential disagreements, by the way. There's kind of three levels to it. One is in principle. Some people say, regardless of the numbers, offsetting in principle is not something that you can do, right? There's just no way to offset an animal being slaughtered. That's terrible from the animal's perspective. Then the second level is about, in theory, so there's the point about supply and demand, and the increased cost of production is going to mean fewer animals are farmed as well. And then also there's a kind of sub point about price elasticity and will, you know, to what extent that actually translates into fewer animals. Then there's the question about does this actually hurt veganuary participation and to what extent? And then the third level is in practice, and I think this is where you can make most criticisms probably. I think that in principle it works, in theory it works, and there has been some things in the execution that, you know, one could argue could have been done better. Some of the posts from the influencers have said that meat is essential. For example, Patrick was posting about this yesterday, which I wouldn't have thought that someone at FarmKind would have signed off on. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. That's my kind of blueprint for the debate, anyway. Oh, hey everyone, how you doing? Hey Soy Daddy, hey Bretta, hey Stem, hey Ali White. donate to the orphan crushing machine to give the orphans a slightly better time before being crushed. Yeah, it's a rough one. There's definitely going to be a name the trait bullet to be bitten, I think. And I think I say that given the same set of contingent facts, if this set of actions could help prevent more human suffering than that set of actions, then that would be my preference. But again, it's I know that sort of thinking is not for everyone.
You can help an amazingly large number of animals really profoundly change their lives for actually really small amounts of money that a lot of people can afford to give. And so that's really what we're focused on trying to do: get more people excited about donating, more people interested in donating, share information. And the way that we do that is we recommend a number of charities we think are particularly good. They're not the only great charities out there, but these are 6 great charities. They've been evaluated by independent reviewers and also expert grant makers. So we're confident these are really great charities. So when people are thinking about where they want to give, we can say, look, these are good places. You can trust that your money is actually going to help animals if you donate to these charities.
I'm being a bit of a pause Andy at the moment. There's another thing about I wonder whether the Shrimp Welfare Project criticisms will come up. We watched Avi talking to someone who was advocating for Shrimp Welfare Project, and there's this point about the type of pain receptors that shrimp have, and it's possible that they're feeling the pain of the stunning but don't feel the pain of suffocation, in which case it goes from being very net good to very net bad. That definitely warrants looking at. Well, not the only charity that they give to, of course, but yeah, I wonder if that will come up, only because I know that Patrick is in these communities to some extent.
That's honestly, it's a great pitch, and that's what I heard about the first time I heard about FarmKind. And even as I'm a vegan myself, and as you probably well know, and I've been working in advocacy since 2017, and so I have to admit, when I first came across my my laptop, let's say, I was interested, but a little bit, am I sure? I don't know how I feel about this. But then I realized, as you said there, I'm not the target audience anyway, and there is a massive untapped number of people that I suppose as vegans we just don't tap, right? And so it's a tool in the toolbox. And I don't. There's a lot of debate that can be had on that. That's the whole abolition versus welfare thing we're not going to get into. But ultimately, it's a tool in the toolbox. And I think the way you explained it there is very much that tool in the toolbox. Like, okay, yeah, it's one of the many ways we can try, right, to change the world. But most people didn't discover FarmKind through that, right? Through your pitch just now and the core of your organization. That's not how they found it. Actually, I'd say that most people have discovered FarmKind in the last 2 weeks, I suppose, since the 30th of December, was it, or 27th of December? I can't remember when this went live, somewhere around there. This is how most people are finding it. And this is where this massive media push through the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, a couple of other.
One thing which I meant to look at, and is going to be an interesting empirical point for the debate, how much news coverage of Veganuary 2026 had there been before this campaign? Obviously, it's Christmas time. Maybe we could compare to previous years, hey? Because if it's the case that there really wasn't any news coverage of Veganuary before this, when there usually is, or historically there has been, then it adds some weight to the sort of any press is good press angle. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know exactly how I would go about looking at that. I'm sure there's some tools that you can use to sort of plot out news coverage. Yeah, we've looked at some stuff like that before for research, but I don't think there's any free platforms that necessarily allow you to do it.
And they came out with this article with the headline, "Veganuary champion quits to run meat-eating campaign."
You do be nodding. That's true, Soy Daddy.
Or I think the Daily Mail went with something a little spicier than that, but even that's spicy enough as it is. And the message, little different to what you said here, actually quite different to what you said here, has been forget Veganuary, right? Keep eating meat, keep eating animal products, donate instead. And the message has been that there's been claims of vegan dogma is not only unhelpful, but as you've said, not you specifically, but your representative said, it's damaging to the fundamental goal of reducing animal suffering. That diet change campaigning actually prolongs animal suffering by alienating people, that it puts an upper limit on what people can do, and also emphasized that you guys are pushing behind, I suppose, I don't know if you're paying them for this, I would assume so, competitive eaters to eat nothing but animal products for competitions for a whole day, and then to what you guys call offset it by donating. So first of all, is that fair? Is that a fair description of the coverage, and at least?
It's a fair description of the coverage. I think so. One of the things we've tried to get corrected in some of the coverage is that this is like a meat eating campaign, because that's definitely not it. We're not encouraging people to eat meat. What we're doing is we're acknowledging the reality, which is that lots of people do eat meat.
Yeah. Tony Vanelli did an interview on GB News where she was able to correct this to some extent. I think this is the main annoying thing, and it's interesting to note that that wasn't their framing. They didn't write a press release saying this is a meat eating campaign. It's always, I mean, with this kind of thing, it's risky, right, to be putting out such a press release, because it can be taken however journalists would choose to take it. And in this case, there was the Telegraph piece, which has the headline, Veganuary champion quits to run meat eating campaign. And then not only that, but it's paywalled. So unless you have the paywall, you can't actually you can't say anything about the fact that it's asking for donations. You just see the meat eating campaign. And as I said when I covered it, I wouldn't really call it a meat eating campaign. There is a part of it where they're having influencers eat only animal products for a day, but it's not saying that vegans should go back to eating meat, as I saw some people asking about. And yeah, it was just interesting to know that that was kind of something that they have challenged in subsequent interviews and media appearances.
Are going to eat meat and saying like, okay, you're not prepared.
Yeah, that's right, Bretta. I don't know if that is part of this challenge or if that's just another thing that guy's doing. It wasn't that clear from the video, but that is pretty high bar for offsetting if he is doing that. Yeah.
Prepared to give up meat or even get in with veganuary, you can still do something, and that is offsetting. Now, obviously, this campaign, I'm sure we'll talk more about like our choices and why we decided to do it. This campaign is doing that in like quite a it's like setting up this sort of dichotomy between veganuary and like offsetting. But fundamentally, that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to speak, as I say, to those people who are like not very interested in veganuary at all. Like that, the media choices for this campaign have targeted on sort of like right of centre media, who already their readers tend to be older. They tend to be there's not the sorts of people who were thinking of doing veganuary in the first place. And we're trying to say, okay, can we reach them with something else that maybe they do find a bit more appealing? And because
that's interesting, yeah. There's a notable lack of Guardian article saying don't do veganuary, huh? It's an interesting strategy because, yes, you know, the places that covered it were the Telegraph, GB News and the Mail. So they're all, you know, yeah, the big names right of centre, really, right? The big three, you might say. I'm sure not by readership or whatever, right? But by notoriety, perhaps, by anti-vegan notoriety. So those were the places that covered it. And ostensibly, yes, their readership is going to be more right-wing and unlikely to do veganuary. The issue is so much media sharing occurs on social media, and we're all kind of seeing each other's headlines, as it were. So I'm sure that a lot of people who are vegans would have had this posted at them by meatheads in their life. The prototypical thing that I always think of is the stubborn dad sending it to his vegan teenage daughter and sort of in mockery. I think that's a common sort of situation. In which case, I hope that the vegan recipients of this article were able to say, okay, do you know what this says? It says that you should be donating. And so you going to donate then, are you? I wonder how many of those interactions happened. Again, it was difficult with the Telegraph one because it was paywalled, which was the first one to come out as well. But
essentially, because like at this point in the year, like
yeah, that's right. So that's exactly it, Samuel.
One of the ways that reliably factory farming and veganism and these kind of questions get into the media is through sort of Veganuary. This is a time of year where journalists are interested in talking about this in a way that maybe they're not at other times of the year. And so that's essentially why we decided to build the campaign around kind of this existing media event. I mean, one of the kind of reasons that we were sort of inspired to do this campaign is I remember reading for a number of years now, each year there's a like, instead of Veganuary, you should do this. And it's often like eat local or like eat organic or regenerative or something like this, right? Yeah. And we were like, well, what if we know that there's going to be that kind of critical vegan.
Do you think these two guys look kind of similar, by the way? I mean, they've just got the notably bushy ginger beard, both of them. I feel like their faces are quite similar.
Veganuary coverage, because there's always critical Veganuary coverage. Can we occupy that space with a message that's where everybody has agreed that factory farming sucks, and all we're debating is what are we going to do about that, right? So like we're trying to say, instead of having this like pointless conversation about, I don't know, should you be eating local stuff because your factory farm can be local too. Let's have a conversation about, yeah, we all agree factory farming is terrible for many, many reasons. What are we going to, what would you like to do about it? And so that was kind of like the thinking that started us engaging in like planning this campaign.
Yeah, I understand the logic. It makes sense. With the point that you don't feel like it's a pro meat eating campaign, and of course I wouldn't expect you to. I mean, you yourself are. I know we have a mutual friend who worked with you at an animal sanctuary. I've no doubt in my mind that you have great intentions and that you genuinely are in it for animals. So don't get me wrong here. Like, I don't think that you would intend to promote a meat eating campaign, and that's probably the media's put a little spin on that.
There's another little difficult thing from their perspective, from FarmKind's perspective. This is a bit of wasp cakery. The people on the campaign are largely vegan, but they can't really say that to publicly, because the whole point of the campaign is not to associate it with veganism. So, you know, they don't. When speaking to other vegans, they're probably wanting to scream, "Bloody, by the way." But, you know, in the media facing stuff and the stuff that is intended to reach that non-vegan potential donor audience, they can't really lead with that disclosure.
But is it hard to blame them, considering that you do have competitive meat eaters as part of your team and they are advocating for your organization? One of these guys, I just saw a video by one of them. He went to a goat farm. He stood with all the goats around him talking about this campaign and how...
They're going to talk about Goatgate. Chat is up in arms about Goatgate. It is pretty shocking, to be fair.
Well, he's going to eat one of these goats, all of the entire goat, right? Almost boasting about that.
All these animals. Yep, guys, I'm going to help all these. January's miserable. It's cold, it's dark, and you're broke from Christmas. And you expect me to give up my meat. As you guys know, I've done some crazy challenges. But there's one thing that I don't think I'll be able to stomach.
Yeah, saying broke from Christmas doesn't gel that well with the donation ask, really, does it?
And that's Veganuary. I've just found
Veganuary.
Whole smarter way to do it. Look after the animals and still be able to eat meat. Yep, that's right, I got you. Don't worry, don't stress. There's something called factory farming, guys. Factory farming is terrible.
You know, as that's exactly right. Yeah, Vegan STEM, that's exactly right. They're infiltrating the anti-vegan space by diverting funds towards animal welfare causes, effectively tricking people into saving animals while allowing them to believe they're still opposing veganism. Yeah, that's it. Some of these people are really have like an anti-vegan identity, right? There's non-vegans and then there's anti-vegans. There's this term vegophobia in research. I never quite bring myself to say that, but I think most people say anti-vegan to capture that sort of sentiment. And it's one of these things where no one will sort of identify as anti-vegan necessarily. I'm sure some people do, but harbour anti-vegan prejudices. Honestly, this like veganism really has enabled me to see a lot of the dynamics of kind of social issues like that, because I've never been that woke personally, and on the all kind of like identity based everything, but a lot of the sort of tendencies and implicit racism and stuff like that is really understandable for me when I think about it through the lens of veganism and the kinds of sort of not quite visible prejudices that people might have and stuff like that. Yeah, an interesting side point. But yeah, what I was going to say about this, I do wonder, this must be quite the experience for this guy, right? If he's kind of thinking about it to any extent, going and standing in the goat farm and saying, I'm going to eat a whole one of these goats. I do wonder whether any of these three content creators, which, by the way, I think that the day of eating only animal products is today. I think that's happening at the moment. So I'm not sure. I don't know if people can go and find social posts from these accounts about it. This is JJ DeLion, this person. I do wonder if any of these content creators will do these kind of promos where they're going to the farm and interacting with the animals, and might that prompt them to think about it a bit more critically? Might some of these guys end up, I don't want to say end up going vegan, and in many ways that would kind of cut against the point of it, but it's interesting. It's sort of starting out with this moral licensing frame, almost like explicitly moral licensing, right? More kind of explicitly than one normally encounters. And I wonder for how many people that introduces subsequent desire for consistency, and therefore people are actually a bit more critical about their meat consumption as a result. Be interesting to see. I have some research on that which I can talk about. It's not quite analogous, but there's something there, I think, about moral licensing versus moral consistency.
Well, if you don't know what
Yeah, I did think this, Soy Daddy. It's not entirely clear if he's understanding the offsetting thing by what he said to me. But let's watch.
it is, look it up. 85% of the meat that you eat are probably factory farmed, which is not great. It's not good stuff for the animals, guys. I love these animals. I love my food. I also love my food. So that's the problem. For this reason, I've teamed up with a brilliant charity company, and they're called FarmKind, right? And I'm basically gonna demonstrate how this works.
It's worth saying as well, like, we're all vegans watching this and going, wow, this is mental. This is like, the dissonance is rife and everything else. Is worth, this is the minority within the minority point, is worth stepping it to the 95% of non-vegans, or the, 80% of not even a bit vegans. This seems like much less bizarre to meat eaters than it does to vegans, I guess.
You don't have to eat salad. You don't have to give up meat. I'm gonna eat a whole lot of meat within 24 hours. Calculate how much meat, exactly how much meat I take in, and see.
Yeah, it's a great question, AQ. I think that's really what it's going to come down to for me. The proof's in the pudding. It's going to be the result of some empirical facts that we don't yet know. Yeah, the music. Yeah, true, Samuel.
How much I'm offsetting. We'll be doing this on the 5th of January.
Let's see that again.
This works. You don't have to eat salad. You don't have to give up meat. I'm going to eat a whole lot of meat within 24 hours. Calculate how much meat, exactly how much meat I take in, and see, how much I'm offsetting. We'll be doing this on the 5th of January. I'll be doing 3 different challenges in that day, including eating one of these, a whole goat. That's right. And hopefully,
So is this part of the challenge?
I'm gonna eat a whole lot of see, you know, how much I'm offsetting. We'll be doing this on the 5th of January. I'll be doing 3 different challenges in that day, including eating one of these, a whole goat. That's right.
Okay, fair. That is going to be part of it. Well, that is, yeah, sucking out the and it's not for us, not for us. That's going to be one of his 3 meals of the day. That's mental.
Right, and hopefully, you know, we can demonstrate how we do this, guys.
I mean, you can understand why people might see that and say this is a meat eating campaign, right?
Yeah, I can. I want to say like, as I say, that we're not sort of trying to encourage people to eat more meat, but I do understand why, particularly the media who like to be sensational, have like taken that approach. The reason that we've
Hey Tristan, good to see you. Yeah, Ali, we'll see. A lot depends if people actually donate. I really think a lot does from most perspectives that one could reasonably have on this. I said yesterday, if this generates billions of dollars, and before the whole movement budget was 300 million, and we're gonna, you know, double or triple or quadruple the movement budget, then I think everyone is gonna largely say, okay, I guess the bet paid off, and whatever lower participation we saw in January, you know, all our animal orgs have got 3x the budget now, so fair play. But certainly there is a small enough number that even defenders like myself might say, not really sure if that was worth it, given how much it generated. And I'm sure the FarmKind team as well, right? I mean, they likely recognise this is a bit of a risk of a strategy. I mean, 300 million is again, it sounds like a lot, but it's a very modest amount. We'll really have to see how much this can generate in donations. If it generates, I don't want to pull a number out my backside, I'm sure we could actually work it out. But it feels like it could easily generate, I don't know what the targets are. I don't know how much it would need to be to offset it. That's something I should try and get an idea of, right? What would success look like? What amount of donations would we say it was worthwhile? Total movement budget, $300 million. Some harm probably done, although not necessarily, to this year's Veganuary participation. And maybe like uptake of veganism more broadly. How much would it need to generate to offset that? What do people in chat think? How much would you take to say it was worthwhile? Not you take, but, you know, generate for the movement.
Particularly thought about working with these guys, they're competitive eaters, is because there's some research from an amazing organization called Pax Fauna, but I believe this is not unique to them. This is a finding that's been replicated other places, that one of the when it comes to the messenger.
Yeah, that's fair, Soy Daddy. I think that will be a lot of people's positions, that just offsetting in principle is not something that you can condone. So it doesn't even need to get to the empirical if that's your position. And I think that's legitimate, you know. But then even then, if you're a threshold deontologist, then there's going to be a threshold. How many? Maybe you are still somewhere on the scale with the rest of us, right? Where is the threshold? How many animals would you forego the chance of helping to avoid harming any? It's like a big trolley problem.
For a sort of anti-factory farming campaign, people who eat meat are much more effective messengers to other people who eat meat than vegans, and so part of this is like,
interesting, AQ. No, I haven't looked at that.
How can we make it really clear that other people like you, so thinking about the audience that we're targeting, other people like you also agree that donating it to help factory farm animals is a good thing? And so obviously when you're in the media, you get very little time, but like, okay, how can we print that in primary colors? Because that's often what you need to do in these situations. We thought actually competitive eaters who, like, their entire job is built around eating food,
It's a nice turn of phrase for media-facing things, paint in primary colours.
A lot of the time, that's like sausages or like hot dogs or something like this.
Mhm.
So they're known for eating animal products.
Right.
If we get them to say, look, even though this is what I do with my time, I still think factory farming is really bad. We hypothesize that like a lot of people will listen to them who wouldn't listen to me, vegan, like guy who runs animal charity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Joseph, that's many people are saying this. I don't know. I think I'm still on board, and it's contingent on empirical things, how it turns out, basically. It's certainly a risk, though. It's certainly a risk.
Is there any concern of the backlash that because you are using competitive eaters and they are actively promoting eating meat, including one guy going to, like I said, going to a farm and pointing at an animal and saying, I'm going to eat a whole animal. I don't know if he meant it that way, but it's the way it looked. Is there not a concern that you might end up creating that sort of feeling of, well, actually, I will maximize my consumption because I can offset it? And then, the offsetting thing, I was going to get to it later, but I guess we're on it now. Because for me, offsetting, I don't have a massive issue with the idea of offsetting when it comes to things that are a little bit more, like, for example, flying. We know that not flying is the best way to save that environmental impact, right? Offsetting mitigates it somewhat, but it's not a replacement for not flying. Everybody gets that. I think nobody's under the illusion that offsetting is the answer when it comes to flying. And when it comes to animals, I'm
not sure if that's a given. I think it is meant to be taken as an offset. If you do the flying plus do the donation, the total amount of carbon will be less than if you had done neither. And I guess in this case, we're saying if you do the meat eating plus do the donation, the total amount of animal suffering or rights violations will be less than if you had done neither. I do think there's a bit of a difference between the two potentially, because in the case of the carbon emissions, it's not like that particular amount of carbon emissions harmed one particular person. It's more like adding to the total, and then that adds to the chance that it's going to affect loads of people. Whereas in the case of eating the meat, I mean, if that guy's going to eat a whole goat, then clearly for that individual goat, there's no offsetting that. So you have to kind of zoom out to the total scale, but I can see how that's a bit more contentious to do in the case of, like, you are actually talking about individuals here, whereas in the case of climate offsetting, I guess you're not.
Even more it has less meaning even, because you can't, like, if you've exploited or killed an animal, you can't offset that, right? You literally can't. That individual, you can't offset what you did to that individual. So the word here does a lot. It does a lot of work, right? But I understand the concept. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it does a lot of work when you can't offset the harm.
Dan, I appreciate everyone sharing their thoughts about this in chat. It's interesting. We got some people with strong intuitions on either side of this being a good thing or a bad thing. I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks this could be a good thing. It seems like we might be in the minority though. Can't offsetting encourage more of the unwanted behavior? Yeah, that's true, Samuel. And I think that's part of what he's saying is, like, if people have the idea of they're offsetting, then they might more easily get the idea that they can just eat as much meat as they want. And, if you follow the offsetting logic, I think that maybe that's a good thing. If they say, well, I'm going to eat more meat and I'm going to donate even more, if it is the case that reduces the total sum of animal suffering or whatever precisely the variable we're interested in is, then I guess that I would prefer them do that than not. It's so unintuitive. Because obviously you are now going to eat more meat, you're going to get a bit more of a dead animal, or like a whole dead animal in this case. So I can see how that is much more salient than the harm reduction that's done through these kind of abstract methods by giving to charities. And there's a lot of steps before you get to the suffering reduction or the expected suffering reduction, whereas in the case of you've got a dead animal in front of you and you're going to eat it now, it's like very obvious and very potent for vegans to recognize the proximate harm. Yeah, Soy Daddy, well, let's hope I don't have to do any bullet bites in that direction, hey?
harm be done to that one individual animal. So it has to.
I will say, I think, you know, we're both going into the debate tomorrow very much with the mindset of like, you know, we somewhat know each other professionally as well as, or I guess mainly, right, rather than online. And so neither of us are trying to dunk very hard on the other. It's a friendly disagreement on strategy. I don't think we're going to have any of those kind of hypos.
To be viewed in a similar way to flying, if not in more of a casual way, in like okay, it mitigates some level of harm, but it probably should be taken possibly less seriously than flying, right? But my point is, anyway, the question is, and I'm giving you a lot right now, so I'll get to the point of the question. Are you concerned that in the way that same way that if everyone said offsetting flying is the answer, people might just fly more, right? Are you concerned that you could have the same backlash here, not backlash, I suppose. What's the word I'm looking for here? Like a negative, an outcome.
Unintended consequence or something.
Unintended consequences that people eat more because now they feel like they can just pay, and that does the same thing as just not eating animals.
Yeah, so I think a really critical like thing to think about, and
it's Tone in chat and I can't see them. Someone said Tone exactly, but I don't actually see Tone's messages. I wonder why.
I think reasonable people can disagree on this, is where we are in kind of our mission. So we both share the same ultimate goal, which is to end the exploitation of animals by humans, right? Mm-hmm. And the question is, like, where are we in that journey? And I think reasonable people can
glad I'm not debating you, soy daddy.
Disagree about this. I think, sadly, we're probably a really long way away from it. I think absent, you know, like a really big breakthroughs in cultivated meat or something like this, I would say it's like maybe like unlikely that we'll see like that end goal in my lifetime. And
okay, that's helpful. All right, okay, that's helpful.
So we're thinking, so in that context, when you're thinking about this as like, okay, we're a long way away from where we want to go, I think the solutions or the tools that make sense to us are quite different to the tools that would make sense to us if we were like much closer to the end of that goal. And so this is why essentially I think offsetting is like a valid approach, because we're in an environment where eating meat is normal in the sense of like most people do it and most people think of it as just like part of life and kind of the default, if you like. And so the question really is like, or the question we think is, how do we get them to take some positive actions and to start doing something about this? We think that there's like a lot of, we can point to historical trends to suggest that asking people to go vegan, asking people to change their diet has been ineffective overall. I'm not talking about any one particular campaign, but just like overall. Mm-hmm. Because there's a great graph actually on Our World in Data where you can, it looks at like meat eating versus veganism versus.
Yeah, I think that's largely true. Ironically, I think the Veganuary is probably one of the most successful campaigns getting people to go vegan. I made a short about this the other day that looked at the spikes in January of people searching for veganism and subsequently going vegan. There's a lot of strong evidence for Veganuary having had quite a big impact. I'm myself a Veganuary vegan. I was vegetarian for many years and then I went vegan in Veganuary, must have been 2019. And I was, a vegetarian who kind of knew that they ought to be vegan and just needed, an impetus to do it, an occasion to do it, I guess. So yeah, I'm sure that, any other Veganuary vegans?
This is vegetarianism and different diets, and you can sort of do a slider, and you'll see that essentially, I think the meat eating stays exactly the same at 72% the entire way through, and the number for vegans and vegetarians kind of bubbles up and down a little bit, but it's essentially flat over the last 15 years. Mm-hmm. And this is just like, we're just not making progress at the moment on this thing. I think there are reasons why that might change in the future, including kind of breakthroughs in kind of alternative proteins and cultivated meat. That's incidentally why one of the charities we support is the Good Food Institute, because they're working on this particular problem. Mm-hmm. But At the moment, that seems like we're quite a long way away from that, and the current strategies people have developed on this don't seem to be having the kinds of overall kind of societal changing impacts that we would like to see. So we're saying, okay, if that's not where we are, if we can't solve that problem right now, like, can we get people to take some positive actions? And that's why we think offsetting makes sense, because when you're thinking in this kind of aggregate, that yes, you can't, there's no amount of money you can pay to make that pig or that chicken alive again and give them a good life. But in the aggregate, you can prevent the next.
Nice, Vegan Stem. Yeah, I think it was just about. You might have been one of the first. Or I guess if you weren't consciously doing Veganuary. But yeah, Veganuary started 2014. So that was just about when it was kicking up, really. Good for you, fellow January vegan.
Next chicken from being stuck in a cage all its life. You can prevent the next pig from having its teeth removed without an aesthetic. You can prevent the next 1,000 shrimps from being killed without stunning or having their eye stalks crushed, these kinds of things. And so while yes, you can't undo the suffering that has been caused by the animals that have already been farmed, we can still, in the aggregate, reduce the suffering that is being caused. And so that's kind of how we think, which is actually how, you know, how offsets on a plane work as well, right? You're not, your plane is still producing CO2. It's that you're like having an impact on CO2 in the aggregate. And so that's why like we talk about offsetting, and like that's why I think offsetting is a valid description of what we're doing.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think I want to be clear that I didn't. This is not a sort of interrogation or I suppose like a big critique.
So interesting. There's a lot of good. 2020 was prime.
Of farm kind, and this is only in light of
true
farm kind taking a position, publicly taking a position that appears to be at least anti-vegan, anti-veganuary, and pro-meat, and that's kind of the context we're talking about here. And I think everything you just said, I find it interesting, and I think a lot of people will find the ideas and the strategies and like, yeah, again, a tool in a toolbox. But I think most people are pointing to issues here in that it does appear the campaign appears to be giving the message to maximize consumption, regardless of whether you intended that or not. It does appear to be saying maximize by the people who are on your team. It does appear to be anti-vegan, at least disparaging of veganism by calling vegan dogma, and especially disparaging of veganuary, which is why I'm bringing up these points. And specifically with veganuary, I mean, we'll have to talk a little bit about the website. So far, I only talked about the Telegraph, the article, but on your website, forgetveganuary.com. I mean, you have a graphic at the top on the left side. It lists, things that when people go vegan, some of the common things that they come up against, I don't know, family being mean or having to check ingredients and learning this new skills. It lists them as like really like, oh, look, this is so horrible. Look at these horrible things you have to.
That's interesting. One of the big complaints that I heard, this list previously said something about plant protein bloat or something like that. And it looks like that's been taken off.
And you only save, I think it's 27 animals.
I think the rest of these are probably accurate, frankly. Right? How to plan every meal is maybe the most contentious, because probably realistically, I don't know about anyone else, but more than 50% of my meals is just like very standard and basic. Like cereal, like just have oat milk, that's fine. But apart from that, yeah, you do have to check ingredients. You may well have to give up your favorite food. I mean, the reality, a lot of people can have some sort of meat thing as their favorite food, or cheese or something like that. Annoyed friends and family, again, it's very like on the nose, but it's probably, I mean, accurate to some extent, right? Or in some cases, on average, perhaps we could say. Felt guilty for wanting meat. Yeah, I guess again that's going to be accurate. So everything they have here at the moment, this is good to note, because I looked at this last one, it still said the plant protein bloat thing, which I thought was less defensible. But it's actually gone more defensible since I saw it, so that's good.
But on the other side, it says you keep on doing whatever you want, and you can save this many animals if you just donate. And you scroll down a little bit, and there's this little game there, and it's direct.
Oh, the Veganuary game. There's been a lot of discourse about the Veganuary game. Anyone tried this? It is quite hard. The little oat milk guy can't really move quickly enough to avoid the things. I saw a screenshot of someone having completed it, so I know it can be done.
Directly mocking Veganuary. Like, it's not. I wouldn't put this up for debate here. I mean, it's a game where you play as a little oat milk, and you move it around, and you have to dodge all the excuses and the
Oh, you can do it with your mouse. I didn't know I was only doing with the buttons.
challenges, and then if you crash, it just says bad vegan. So it really does overreach on the sort of the on the mockery side of things, and it's quite disparaging to Veganuary.
I think that you could say, and perhaps you will say, the game. I know a lot of people really didn't like the game. Anyone play the game? The kind of point of the game when you lose is you get the bad vegan message. I guess it's meant to analogize to the supposed psychology of someone who's trying to do Veganuary, and it is a big problem and something that psychologists could study how to change the mindset, whatever. That people will have this kind of attitude of like, oh, well, I slipped up one time, I had that milk in my tea, and now I've failed Veganuary, and so now I'm going to stop doing it. Or at least if you were calling yourself a vegan and you did that, there is, it is in a sense like purity based, which, as I've argued is fine. That I think that's, if you want to approach it that way. But you will have diminishing returns on each additional effort to exclude the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, if your focus is excluding any harm done. So this is Vegan 2.0, that you can be much better off by changing your focus to maximizing harm prevented. And in that case, you don't have this feeling that like, oh, it's the end of the world if I had to have some medicine that had milk powder in it or something like this, because you're just reassured that I'm giving way more to charities and doing way more other stuff that's going to help way more animals than are ever implicated in this tiny little imperfection. But yeah, I know, I don't, I think that's the point. That's the thinking of the game.
And just I will give you a chance to respond to all this, but I just want people to like get the full picture before we go into it as to why this is even an issue.
Ali Work says, punched my grandmother in the face, but it's okay because I donated to a retirement home. Yeah. Along with the political left. Yeah, I mean, I try to be pretty apolitical on other issues, just because I think that the more stances one takes, the fewer people that you're going to have perfect overlap with, or sort of sufficient overlap that they feel happy to collaborate with you. So I try to not really take positions on most things like that. And I don't know. Seems like you do have more people interested in animal issues on the left on average, though that hasn't always been the case. Apparently, it used to be a right-wing issue, and leftists would say, animal rights is just distraction from worker rights. Apparently that was the thing back in the day. Yeah, the growth rate of veganism is too slow. Yeah, I agree with that. This is a bit of innovation. It's just going to try and change the pace. 300 million, maybe they get, let's say the campaign generates 6 million and they've increased the total budget by 2%, sort of counterfactually. That starts to look like good value. Again, I'm a little bit hesitant to put precise numbers on it. Okay, don't quote me on 6 million, but that would be 2% of the current budget, and that could be seems like it's not out of the realms of possibility.
Or why are we even talking about this? And a big part of why this has exploded, why is it in the media, is actually because of who is the face of it, which is Tony Vanelli, who is, as the media has correctly reported, used to work for Veganuary. She was the head of communications at Veganuary, and is now fronting the Forget Veganuary campaign. So it appears to people, again, you can say whether this is right or wrong, up to you, but it appears that she's gone from being a vegan to being an anti-vegan to the general public, is what it looks like. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but it's what it looks like, because she's talking about vegan dogma and, oh, forget Veganuary. It really does appear like a big anti-vegan story. So I guess my question here, with all that in mind, is, I mean, did you anticipate that having a former Veganuary communications lead front this campaign called Forget Veganuary, which has all of this disparaging stuff towards Veganuary? Did you expect at all this could be read as like a complete rejection of veganism itself rather than a strategy disagreement?
I think Tony has been very brave in her engagement with the whole thing. Clearly, she has agreed to be the fall guy, as it were, right? She's in the position where she can get the headlines to say ex-Veganuary, right? That's kind of the story that they can get press to cover it. So I think the answer is kind of yes, to some extent, and that's part of the media strategy. Now, whether the media has taken that as the guys at FarmKind would have liked them to is, there's a different discussion.
So I guess like I would slightly question some of the premises in that
Yeah,
question.
go for it. Yeah, so I mean, it was a lot of information, but
yeah.
Go for it. Yeah,
I think obviously this is very much in the
Interesting claim. Joseph says there's empirical proof that intersectionality doesn't work. Yeah, I'd love to read that. I mean, it seems I've described that sort of stance as like non-intersectional. I don't know if that's like how to think of it entirely. Yeah, veganism being aligned with the left is a lot of reason why people hate vegans. It should be apolitical. Yeah, that's my intuition. It gets lumped in, doesn't it, with wokeism in general. But I think it needn't. Oh, Ali, they're not donating to the small farms, but they're donating to animal welfare organizations that campaign for laws and corporate campaigns and other stuff like that. So it's not that they're not giving money to farms directly.
of the beholder.
The Linda problem. No, I'm not familiar with the Linda problem. I might have to Google that. That's far too intriguing. Ah, okay. This is what I've been... Yeah. This is the thing about intersectionality, huh? Conjunction effect or Linda problem is a bias or mistaken reasoning where adding extra details, an and statement or logical conjunction to a sentence makes it appear more likely. Wait, adding extra detail... Does it? Well, it makes it, in fact, less likely, right? Yeah, logically, this is not possible because, yeah. Because adding more claims can make a true statement false, but cannot make false statements true. If A is true, then A plus B might be false if B is false, whereas A is false, then A and B will always be false. Yeah, exactly. Therefore, A and B cannot be more likely than A. So here's the Linda problem. Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy. As a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Which is more probable? Number one, Linda is a bank teller. Number two, Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement. Yeah. Nice. That's a really nice example for it. I had not heard Linda problem. Thank you for sharing that. So, of course, the answer is it's more likely that she's a bank teller than that she's both a bank teller and active in the feminist movement. Because there's just another, even if this thing is very likely, is in conjunction with this thing. So the first has to be more probable than the second. Yeah, so you know, um, what's more likely, that a given person is a vegan or that a given person is a vegan and pro-Palestine, let's say. Now, you have the kind of intuition that, well, those things roughly align. They're sort of left-leaning causes, ostensibly, or maybe. And so surely that aligns, and that must be more likely. But of course, the more things you add, the less likely that like perfect alignment becomes. And you might introduce some things which are cause people to not want to align with you, right? If you're like, I'm a really strongly pro-Palestine vegan campaigner, well, then there might actually be some people who are like, well, actually, the pro-Palestine thing's a deal breaker for me, and I'm not gonna, right? There, there's people on both sides of this issue, clearly. So yeah, I agree. I think the more things you add to your position overall, or like your public positions, the things that you're active on talking about, the less likely you're going to get alignment. That was a nice one. Thank you for sharing that, Blooper.
And I wouldn't dispute that many people have perceived this as like disparaging of vegans and so forth. It is also the case that many people read what we were doing in the way that we intended it, which is as some light-hearted ribbing of vegans and kind of playing with some stereotypes. Also, some things that are true. So essentially, what our website does is it makes I think it makes two basic claims. One is that like being vegan is very, many people find being vegan very hard.
Appreciate you, Blooper.
I think this is fairly hard to like disagree with. Like, not everyone finds it hard. Obviously, I don't. Living in London, I'm very privileged. Like, there's loads of really good vegan food here, but many people find it hard. And secondly, that you can help as many or more animals, or as much, and prevent as much suffering by donating. And I think both those claims are like pretty pretty defensible.
See, little signal there, but he's not trying to necessarily say I'm vegan. By the way, so I don't find it hard. That must be a frustrating thing for the farm kind guys, because I think a lot of them are, but they don't want to make that a part of the conversation, and certainly a part of this campaign. So it's some coyness is required.
The way that we do that is obviously trying to use humor and trying to like reference stereotypes that people would find recognizable around like how things can be difficult, like around being vegan, things can be difficult. You have to check lots of packages. Milk powder is in everything. These kinds of things. And I appreciate that not everyone got that as a joke or felt that it was a joke, and that's legitimate. As I say, humor is entirely subjective. I can't tell someone they should have responded differently, of course. We did actually make a few changes to the website in response to feedback. So there were a few points in there that, although it wasn't the way we intended them to be read, could be read as making claims like being vegan is less healthy or is unhealthy. We don't want to like sort of even be seen as propagating that meme. So we changed some wording, removed some bits from the website to kind of remove those things, and to try and stick much more closely to this single thing, which is actually, do you know what? Like, for many people, being vegan is hard, and there are alternatives.
Interesting. That must be in reference to the bloating thing, which seems to be gone now. Good to know that they have been responsive to feedback and have made some changes and so on.
I have actually now forgotten what your initial question was, having gone through that.
It was just. I mean, yeah, this actually adds to it. So basically, the point was that I know that the jokey side of things, I understand now that that's how it was intended to be perceived. But I guess you did answer the question, because I think the answer would be that no, you didn't anticipate it. Because I understand from your perspective this was a tongue-in-cheek thing, but I think maybe you didn't anticipate that having someone ex-veganuary come out and front it and use things like vegan dogma and things like that, then it's very hard to perceive it as a joke when the individual is following all of the anti-vegan, pro-meat propaganda playbook. It's a dogma. It doesn't really help. It actually hurts animals. Vegans harm all our animals. That whole thing that the anti-vegans use.
I don't think they said it hurts animals. I think wasn't the quote something like vegan dogma is failing to help animals? Tom's having to think about it as well. He's got, I don't think we said that. I think that was the quote. Vegan dogma is failing to help animals, which again, I think that's arguably true, right? If this strategy pays off and we can get, help many more animals by departing from the vegan line, I don't think they're not. I don't think they talk about crop deaths and stuff like that, do they? I don't think so.
Use it really makes it difficult to see that and think, oh, okay, it's just a tongue-in-cheek thing. And I know the vegans aren't even, the animal people aren't your target market here, but I do know that there's been, it's not only the vegans that have been a little bit irked, I think, and confused.
Yeah, I'm in line with that thinking, Vegan STEM. I don't know what you do, but your name makes me think that it must be something in STEM. You have to think about the statistical outcomes. We'll reach the tipping point quicker this way. Oh, thanks, Joseph. I appreciate that. I'll have a look at that.
Let's say, or annoyed, let's say. I know that actually within, within the welfare movement itself, like, the welfare reform, there's been a lot of people who have also kind of highlighted this. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it doesn't feel like it was anticipated. Would it be fair to say that was maybe you missed that maybe?
So I think we definitely didn't anticipate the kind of the level of strength of the feeling that people would have. I think that, which is why we've, as I say, like things like, for example, we've taken some steps to like sort of change some things, and I've also been talking to people across the movement, like one-to-one and things like this, to try and like get perspectives and like see if there's something, what we could and should be doing differently, and that kind of thing. And coming on shows like this as well to explain kind of what our thinking. On a couple of specific things. So I guess there's the jokey bit, and then there is the serious bit of the message. Although this campaign is not aimed at like the movement or people who are doing work, like that's not our intended audience. I think there is a serious and also defensible claim underneath some of these points. So when Tony says that she thinks like the vegan, like the way she put it is that like the insistence on veganism, and like this is like our primary message to people that what they should do is
based vegan STEM. Okay, nice. Damn, that sounds well paid. You must be saving a lot of animals.
Hurting the movement or harming animals. What she's saying is not, because of mouse plagues or insects or anything.
Hey, you just added me on LinkedIn, didn't you? I thought I recognized that picture.
Of this kind of stuff. That's not what she's referencing. What she's referencing is simply that this is a message that we think has limited cut through. Obviously, you and I are both examples of like many people find this message compelling to change their diets. Many people find this as like the obvious ethical response to what they see in factory farming. But many other people, and many more people, we think this is just a bar that is too high for them to cross, and that if they think that it is either go vegan or nothing, that even though they feel sympathy for animals, even though they hate the way what they see in factory farming, they are more likely to choose the nothing category than the vegan category, and that ultimately is harmful to what we're all trying to achieve if that's true. So that's, I think, the point that she's trying to make there.
I think we want some sort of overlapping, like a Venn diagram of the different groups that we've got. I think that we said about 5 times as many people are willing to donate to animal charities, asterisk, not necessarily farmed animal charities at this stage, as are willing to go vegan. Presumably a lot of these vegans are also going to be willing to donate to the charity, so we could put it like this. And then you've got How can we do this? We want sort of. I won't try and make it partially. All right, whatever. Make it transparent. So you could put it like this, and then say we've got willing to donate. Willing to go vegan. Willing to do both. And then we've got, so this is to this, and then this. Is to this group. I could probably make this a little bit clearer, but I think that's a helpful illustration, right? If these were different, I want these to be different colors. Let me run that. Let me play the video and do this on the other tab. This is boring to watch.
Yeah, no, I actually have spoken about that myself. I've written about that. I've got a Substack where I've written about that. You know, I agree with Tobias Leinart on this, that oftentimes black and white thinking doesn't fit into a nuanced world, and it can leave people choosing, you know, if black is go vegan and white is do nothing, people might just say, I'll do nothing then. And then people who decide to start eating plant-based, make one mistake, and then, well, they've been told it's black or white, so I might as well do nothing then and just go back to eating steaks every day or whatever. Yeah, it is a problem. It's a shame if that is the actual message. It's a shame that I don't feel like that quite came across. It reads, especially the media, the way they did it, it does read like a just straight up anti-vegan argumentation. I can't say how Tony actually did it. And I know that I've seen that you've said in some forums that you feel that the media span it a little bit, which I understand. But I guess it was always going to be a risk with a campaign called Forget Veganuary. You know, so it's very hard for people to interpret that any other way, really. And there is something that I wanted to touch on, because I think it's important. Again, I'm not here to defend Veganuary. That's not my only. You know, I'm not a member of Veganuary. I'm not like a member of the team or anything like that. I'm just looking to bring some balance to it, because obviously they've not really done a proper response, and I don't think they will. So it is good to have some balance and find out what's really going on here. As whether you like it or not, you guys did come out on the.
Well, they did. They gave a quote for the news coverage, didn't they? The Veganuary, some Veganuary people also posted on the EA forum thread about this. I don't know if they'll do more responding than that. The thing is, now is a very busy time for Veganuary, so they're probably not going to do a whole lot.
The attack, maybe you didn't mean to, but it is a public attack, right? So, and one of the things that I've seen, again, I've been keeping up with, or both you and Aidan, the other co-founder, have been chatting online in some forums in some public places about the Veganuary team, and you know, I wanted to talk about, you know, how they were in on this or weren't in on this. And
do you know, Ali, that's such an interesting comment. Someone said, in war, not everything is calculation and probabilities. Driving factor requires having a means of force, and the risk assessment and strategy comes secondary. Having strategy and no force is called a paper tiger. Okay, that's not quite how I thought this comment was going to end. But one thing that I did in thinking about this and making videos about this, I was thinking about The Imitation Game. Anyone seen the movie The Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch as Alan Turing? They crack the Enigma code, right? World War II, they crack the Enigma code, the code used by the Nazis. And there's this very dramatic scene where, as soon as they discover the code that the Nazis have been using to communicate, they sort of unravel that there is currently a message saying that this ship's going to attack this ship, and one of their brothers is on the ship, and they go to prevent the attack, and you know, the others will pull him back because they say it's sort of a game theory situation now. If we prevent every attack, we're going to give away that we have cracked the code, and they're just immediately going to change the code. So what they did is have, rather it was, we need to pick and choose and be careful and be strategic about which attacks we're actually going to prevent, and if we prevent all of them, then we give it away. So we have to let some attacks happen, and we have to make some sacrifices, basically, in order that we preserve the secret. But when I looked into this, I was going to cite this as a great example of like, a trade-off that's similar type of trade-off, basically, right? We're going to make some sacrifices, but we think that there's a greater good to be had. But when I looked into it, apparently it's a bit of a myth that they actually allowed any ally ships to be sunk to preserve the secret. They did. There was one aircraft carrier that was sunk, but it was due to it wasn't like a strategic decision because they were trying to preserve the secret. It was more like a failure of communication. It wasn't quite clear to the captain of the ship that they were meant to take action on this or something like that. So it's presented in the film as like they were sort of playing a game of chess and sacrificing some pieces. But in actual fact, apparently they really didn't allow any attacks. What they would do instead was to have, intercept the messages. They've cracked the code. They can work out where the ships are going or whatever. And now they're going to send like a recon plane so that the Germans see it and think, okay, it must have been that recon plane that saw us, so that they weren't giving away that they cracked the code, right? So they had this sort of plausible deniability strategy where they were still able to prevent attacks without giving away that they had cracked the code. So once I looked into it, that was going to be a good example that I would cite as like a good, bit of strategic sacrifice sometimes. But it turns out that in that scenario, they didn't actually bring themselves to make those kind of cold-hearted decisions, and they found other ways of having their cake and eating it.
It's been sort of hinted that they know what it's all about. It's okay. They're on board. It's a strategy sort of thing, but it doesn't appear to be the case. I've seen a spokesperson from Veganuary, again, not publicly, because I don't think they're going to come out publicly, but sort of semi-publicly say that they actually weren't notified of this properly. They were notified a campaign was coming, and it was going to be an alternative, but they weren't told that it was going to be Forget Veganuary, and it was going to be like a what feels like a kind of coordinated attack to help raise donations for FarmKind. So that being the case, I guess I just want to ask, I mean, you can correct that obviously if that's incorrect, or if you feel there's something nuanced there, but on a personal level, I mean, did you ever consider the kind of a personal impact this might have on, not just the co-founders of Veganuary, but Veganuary themselves? I mean, they're going into the hardest part of the year for them and their organization, taking all the crap from like Piers Morgan and etc. And, having to also take some, whether it's, perceived crap, maybe it's not real, but it's perceived heat from their own side. Was that a consideration for you guys as well?
Really good question. I'm glad I'm going to get to hear Tom's thoughts on this part, because, yeah, it seemed in the EA forum that the FarmKind guides have kind of said, don't worry, Veganuary's in on it. And that someone from Veganuary said, well, not really. Let's see what they say. And this could go to another point, by the way, especially about the execution. I have this in my... Hey, look, I coloured these in now. So that's a bit more intuitive. Whoops. But yeah, that's one of the points I have in my debate slides here, or it's really just bullet points at the moment, not strategic with respect to the Veganuary org. And this is some of the most interesting criticism that I had on my LinkedIn post as well, was people saying you got to think about the effects on, trust within the movement and stuff like this, as well as other outcomes. It's a really interesting one because, infighting, right? We don't want infighting. My sense is that infighting is something that can be destructive, but could also be constructive if there is like some, maybe it would have another name than infighting in the case where it's constructive, I don't know. But maybe if there's some, friendly and constructive disagreement about strategy, as I hope tomorrow's debate will be, then that could be a type of infighting that is beneficial. or has, good outcomes. Certainly, there can be cases of infighting where that's not the case, and there's, expected bad outcomes. So yeah, but this is the point. Oh, you can't really see this because I'm covering it up. This is the FarmKind sort of theory of change, right? You can access this much bigger group of people who are willing to donate but not willing to go vegan. Now, they could have said you should donate and go vegan and go for this sort of purple segment. This is vegan 2.0 in many ways, right? I'm like very pro donations. You should donate. You should be proactive. And I do say that you should also be vegan. And that is a strategic choice on my part as well. I mean, it is, that is my sincere view, and it might be difficult to especially do live streams and be very insincere for a long time. But my thinking was, you have vegans who are already showing a high level of commitment to this cause, and most of them probably don't know that they can double or triple or quadruple their impact by doing a little bit more and something that's relatively easy. So let's go for this, activate this purple segment, right? This is vegan 2.0. But FarmKind is going for this much bigger red segment of willing to donate but not vegan. And, we could say, you could have a larger circle around all of this of people who are not willing to donate or go vegan. That would want to be quite a big one to reflect that this should be about 25% of that. Willing to do neither. But yeah, hopefully that's clear. Hopefully people will know what I'm talking about here, and this is kind of compelling.
So yes, is a consideration. Just to really quickly go back. Veganuary have posted a response in a couple of places.
They should ask Piers Morgan to donate. True. Like anytime they speak to these right-wing journalists, they should be doing that. Like the GB News, that was probably a missed opportunity. They could just say to the GB News guy, "Are you going to do the 15 quid a month?" Right? Nothing to him. Piers Morgan, certainly he could offset a lot of meatheads.
I want to be very careful about like making sure I get the precise things right, but so people can go and look for that. What is the case is when we were initially planning this campaign, we hadn't decided what it was going to look like or what the messaging would be or any of that sort of stuff. We notified them at that stage, and then we also shared follow-ups once we had kind of just got closer to like formalizing it. We did share with them the name of the campaign before it went out, and we also told them about the Telegraph article, which was kind of, so there were some other pieces that got published that hadn't actually just like picked up on the Telegraph article, but the Telegraph article was the one that we kind of seeded, and we told them about that before it went out, so they could like have a response and things like this. I hope that like we haven't implied that like Veganuary was sort of in on it or something like this, because I wouldn't want to do that. That's not the case. This is a FarmKind campaign. Veganuary has their own campaign. We notified them of these things as we're going forward. We thought carefully about what we thought the likely impacts of this campaign were going to be. As I say, we predicted that there was going to be critiques of Veganuary anyway, as there always is each year. It's part of the kind of media cycle around this. Journalists are trying to find some new angle for this every year, and we were hoping to, rather than add to that, we were hoping to sort of occupy that space that we knew was going to be there anyway, with a critique that's hopefully at least like where it's very easy for everyone in the critique to agree that factory farming is terrible, and like we're sharing a lot of the same messages. We're just deviating on like what we're recommending people do in response to that. In terms of like the personal stuff, I think like, so we very much wanted to leave it to to Veganuary's leadership in terms of like how they were going to handle that stuff, because it's just not for me to, it's not for me to be involved.
Yeah, I agree, Tristan. There's the point about pushing up the cost of production, and then there's also another point which I made in one of my shorts this week about just generating news coverage about animal welfare, which some people worry people will take as like, oh, there's welfare laws now, and now we're allowed to eat them. But it seems to be the case that coverage about welfare reforms tends to have people consume less of those products. There's some evidence to that effect.
Involved in that at all.
Okay, right. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to ask this question now, actually.
So, sort of a summary of the question, summary of the answer there on the thorny Veganuary, did Veganuary know topic. They knew that it was coming, but they didn't have hand in it, and don't in fact endorse it. I still think that there could end up being some sort of unexpected benefits. We'll see how it pans out. Hey, Rebecca. I'm skeptical that charities are causing the welfare changes. Seems like most of the changes correspond to laws. We didn't see welfare changes stopping fish from being suffocated to death because there's no laws. Yeah, interesting. I mean, so some of the campaigns are, I guess, campaigning for laws. And then many of them are campaigning for corporate policies, which in some senses you could say is a step down from laws, but maybe in some cases a step up from laws. Into, there's some corporations that are bigger than some countries. So I'm sure that going after like Tyson, you're talking about more animals than going after, Bora Bora, or some other small country where there's not that many animal farms. And the other interesting thing about the corporate policy changes is they do tend to then accelerate the law changes, because it's very difficult to pass a law when it entails changing 100% of the production system, and now everyone's going to have to update to cage-free or whatever it is. But if you're in a situation where it's like, well, 40% of people are doing this already, there's some companies that are entirely compliant with this new proposed standard that we want to put into law, I think that it gets to be much easier. Like, a good example of this is Lidl in the UK. They're now campaigning for it to be law that retailers in the UK have to have targets for plant-based foods, to like increase sales of plant-based foods. And they're campaigning for that because they've got those targets. And so they've already done it. Now it becomes actually in their interest to lobby for that, because it would be an advantage for Lidl over the other supermarkets. So I think that the corporate policy changes in many ways sort of, precede the legal changes strategically, or at least that can be the case.
But I think we'll come back to it a little bit later. I think for now, let's bench some of the more personal stuff then, and talk a bit more about the claims made by the campaign. And again, these are critiques that have arisen from people who are looking at this, who have sent me comments and questions that they
He's done a pretty thorough job, David Ramsey. He's got good notes, like going through all the relevant issues. I think this is good.
wanted to know from you. And they're looking at this as a FarmKind versus Veganuary situation, and not the other way around, because Veganuary hasn't done a website and a campaign against FarmKind.
Hey, maybe they should. Maybe they should. I'm looking out for Veganuary's Forget FarmKind campaign. I don't think the guys at FarmKind would mind that, actually. If this was, because one thing that could come out of this, there are a lot of vegans who feel like this is an attack, and this is certainly an attack on Veganuary, and who feel quite defensive of that and motivated to do something about it. Where's the Veganuary Forget FarmKind campaign? I think that's a bloody good idea, honestly.
Does appear to be the other way around, and a lot of the claims that are made, I think, could do with a little bit of investigation, so we can see what you think. So a lot of the critique of Veganuary, or of the idea of Veganuary, is
hey, wouldn't it be interesting to see which campaign got more donations? That'd be like a nice little experiment on this idea. right? Maybe this purple sector is stronger than this red sector by amounts donated. I think that's a pretty good idea. Anyone from Veganuary watching, feel free to take that idea. Honestly, forget farmkind.com.
Is that it's just individuals doing a diet for a month, and there's all these individual changes that are difficult, and this is why you should donate instead. But Veganuary is not only limited to that, right? I mean, you know this, I'm sure, but it wasn't. It was oversimplified, I think, in your campaign to make it easier to I suppose criticize them so that you could to raise donations. And so I mean, they do year-round work, right? They do institutional work. They're working with various levels, various organizations, businesses. They've got permanent and semi-permanent plant-based options into various businesses, companies around, especially the UK and Germany. They've done a lot of work. So I mean, given that, do you think? I mean, I guess first of all, you knew that, I'm going to assume, right? Because the campaign acts like that's not the case. That's why I'm clarifying that. So with that being the case, was that something that? Yeah, was this part?
Yeah, true, Samuel. I'm going to be talking to AY tomorrow after the Patrick Razoroff debate. I can't assume that AY will have watched that debate. I should message him and let him know it's taking part, though, because if so, we can talk about it afterwards. But we can talk about this campaign in any case. Back-to-back debates with threshold deontologists. It's going to be a long night tomorrow. Yeah, I agree, Tristan. Alternative proteins are a really big part of the solution here. I see it as you have to get the costs of going vegan so low and the benefits of going vegan so high that it becomes, anyone making the cost-benefit analysis will tend towards going veganism, and that you can get the cost of going vegan very, very low if you have like the perfect animal product alternatives, right? Cheaper and tastier and everything else. Then there's a very, very low cost to going vegan in that case. And the benefits to going vegan, I think, I won't say it's going to primarily come from a sort of growing form of social pressure. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Part of the strategy to sort of kind of not cover that and just talk about it as in for the individual and represent Veganuary as only that, or what was the thought behind that?
Well, so the thing that we're kind of latching onto and trying to sort of say like, oh, well, there's an alternative is specifically for the yearly campaign around like Go Vegan for January, right? Which is like also kind of everyone knows that as being called Veganuary. There's like
it's that the most public campaign. Part of it.
Yeah, and then there's like the organization Veganuary that does other stuff, but like that's the thing that everybody knows. Like that's the thing that it's.
There's also like a bit of an interesting question. I almost didn't go here, but there's a bit of an interesting question about, as you're saying here, the extent to which Veganuary means or like is owned by with the Veganuary organization. Veganuary, the concept, obviously, well, maybe the trademark is owned by Veganuary, the organization, I don't know. But one problem that they have as an organization is that a lot of people do Veganuary without ever going to sign up. Some small fraction of the people doing Veganuary go and sign up to the Veganuary website, or even maybe know that there is a charity called this, right? The concept is bigger than the organization. And so, Rams is saying here, well, this kind of ignores the organization's other work. And Tom's rightly saying we're not really talking about the organization. We're talking about the Get Vegan for January.
It's commonly referred to as, and that's what everyone knows. And like, indeed, that's how the organization started. And like that campaign is called Veganuary. So that is the specifically, so we don't talk about any of this other stuff because we're not trying to launch any critique of the organization as a whole or any other work. And as I say, we some of the charities that we support that we recommend are engaged in various different kind of diet change programs.
Okay.
We're not like we're not making a broader kind of point about like those sorts of things. What we're doing is we're specifically talking about this January, Go Vegan for January, if you like, call a campaign that I think everyone knows as Veganuary in the UK.
That's great. Yeah.
I'm not going to watch all of this, by the way. I'll do another sort of 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna have to end stream.
Yeah, that leads us on to our next point. Actually, the question that came up was about this upper limit thing that Tony said, and this sort of contradicts what you said just now, in that diet change is not something that Farmkind is opposed to, and actually you work with charities that do promote it, because Tony actually specifically said that diet change is actually holding animals back. Like, I can't remember exact words, but it was there in the Telegraph interview. And there's a ceiling to it. There's an upper limit to it, she said. Now, I have a question, a sort of a statement and a question. And again, you're free to reject the premise. And I'm sorry if I know I'm packing a lot of information sometimes in with these questions, but I feel there's a lot to say, and I'm trying to I'm trying to get everybody on the same page before we ask you a question. So, but I think we both agree. You tell me if not, that enough people. We have some basic supply and demand. It's not so simple, but it's very complicated. But basically, if people reduce demand to a certain point, supply will reduce. Now, there'll be, government subsidies make that more complicated, but at some point there is a cutoff where the government won't be able to subsidize 100% of the bloody industry, right? So if enough people drop demand, then obviously less animals bred in captivity, exploited and killed. Many farms will shut down. Factory farming will cease to exist if people reduced to a massive level. So the world could look very different just by reducing that. But with Tony's point about the upper limit of diet change, that
I think there's an upper limit from the perspective of an individual, right? You can only reduce your own consumption so much.
is the upper limit of diet change. That is it right there. As in a world potentially without farming, right?
What she's saying is that, and she did a TV interview the other day, which I think made it's fair. So she's on GB News, and I think she made this point like a little bit clearer, because you can kind of when you're in broadcast. But what she's saying is, like, you as the individual, you can only not eat the animals you were going to eat. Depending on how lucky you are with your money, there is potentially no impact, no limit on like how much you could give, and that's what she means. So she's not saying like
for vegan STEM. Any animal movement oilers? Any ballers in chat?
Like, veganism overall, if we imagine like everyone did it, that this would like not solve the problem. She's saying like you as an individual, because that's all you can really control is your own actions. Like the limit of what you can not eat is what you were going to eat otherwise.
Right, I understand. But I guess my question here, I suppose the critique of this idea, the question is that no individual person should be considering veganism as or eating a plant-based diet as an individual thing. It's not. The only way it makes a difference is if it's collective. So you as an individual don't.
I don't think that's there is still the individual animals that the individual is eating, right? To make a big difference, you could say it only works if it's collective. Good pause for both of them. Good pause for both of them here. Tom looks poised to disagree in the same way that I am. There's one individual reducing the diet does make some amount of difference to animals, but the upper limit is at the individual level, and obviously donating, you can blast right through that. Right, guys, I'm going to have to leave it there. I will do a little more work on my slides. Don't tell Patrick Rezaroff to come and see my debate plan, will you? This was top secret debate prep stream. I'm going to build this out a little more before tomorrow, and I'm going to send them to him anyways. But thank you for teaching me about the Linda problem. This is the guy I'm debating tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow for the debate from 7:30 and Ask Yourself from 9 o'clock. So tomorrow's going to be a good long stream. We'll have a lot going on. I'll look forward to seeing you guys then. I appreciate you, Tristan. Thanks for being here, everyone. Keep it vegan 2.0. All right, everyone. I'll see you soon. Thanks for joining. Cheers.